Today on Breaking Bullying, we're tackling the hidden grief from being bullied, and we're going to learn how to shake it off to take back your confidence. We'll get into it after I hit this music. Joining me this week is my friend Lupe Carranza. She is a certified grief educator, and she's also an actress, which is a fun fact. Lupe, thank you so much for coming on today.
Hi everyone. Welcome. I am so thrilled to be here and to share about the grief that comes along with bullying after you've been bullied. I have some thoughts and ideas about it, and I'm also a yoga teacher. So there's a lot of things that we can do to combine, things to help us release and let go of some of those emotions that get a hold of us.
So I guess before we get started, we should probably define what is grief. Because to me, when I hear the word grief, I always think of somebody sobbing in a corner or whatever. Just
Yeah.
an example. But what really is grief? Like,
Grief is when someone passes, grief is the love that you are holding for that person and they're not here anymore. Grief is when it comes to bullying, it's that sense of loss of the trust in yourself, of the trust in your surroundings. And so that in all areas is grief.
okay, are there any other different types of grief that people can experience, or is that kind of the whole thing right there?
Yeah, people always say, "What's the worst kind of grief?" But the worst
There we
kind of
go.
grief is your grief, you know, no matter what is going on, it's what's going on with you, the grief that you're feeling in this moment. And we don't compare grief at all because it's like, fingerprints are so different, and so is our grief and how we, relate to it and heal it.
Are there signs that people can give off that they're grieving? Because looking back at my own life, I still can remember when I was like 12 years old, laying in bed at night, just feeling like, I don't know. I don't know if it's really called grieving, but at that point, I felt safe because I was in my own bed at home. And, but at the same time, I knew the next day I had to go back and face these people again who are just going to make my life a living hell.
Mhm.
So would that be considered, was I grieving at that point, or do
I would
are there other
Yeah,
ways
I
people show
would
grief?
Yeah. Grief can show up in a lot of different ways. Like I said, it's so different. It's as different as your fingerprint. And it can show up in anxiety. It can show up in, always wanting to know what's the plan, what's the next thing, and then we go into like a trauma. A trauma is the situation. It's not the situation that happened, but it's how you felt in that moment. And if you weren't able to share how you felt in that moment because you don't have someone to talk to, or you thought, oh, it's not a big deal, then that's where the trauma lies. And if you cannot, share it or express it with someone that you trust and know that actually cares about you, then that's when you have that anxiety. And I know, some people don't want to burden anybody else with it. So they just keep it to themselves. And that's where the grieving happens as well too. And there's in within that there's the sadness and the anger and all of those different emotions that we go through. And I want to debunk the myth that there's 5 stages of grief because there isn't. It's just different emotions that we go through at different times. And sometimes you're angry, sometimes you're sad, sometimes you're angry again, So it just depends on what's going on.
It's interesting you brought up anxiety tied to grief because
Mhm.
I work with kids. I have plenty of my own kids, and I worked with those kids who have to ask a million questions, and they do have that little look of, well, at that time, like, are they really worried about it, or they're just asking me a ton of questions? But I guess that can. be called grief as well? That's just I guess what I'm trying to get at, that anxiousness is them really kind of being worried about something,
Yeah,
but
the
they
anxiousness is
bring it they
yeah,
bring
go
it
ahead.
out in so many different questions.
Yeah, exactly. They just wanna feel safe. If you've had an experience where, it wasn't resolved by you or your parent, then, you're on the ready, to make sure that it's not gonna happen again. "What about this? What about that?" "Okay, okay, okay." And if you can assure them that they are safe and taken care of, even after that, there's still gonna be a little bit of, "Yeah, but," so they have to learn to trust themselves. That's the other thing, after you've been bullied, you don't even trust yourself anymore sometimes. And so that's very scary and makes you feel very lonely, and, without being able to share that with anyone, then you feel even more anxious.
So I have a two-part question here for you, one tied to kids, one tied to adults. So for kids, that could be could be being bullied at school, and maybe as a parent you don't quite know. How can you help them feel safe even though we as a parent I can't be there with them holding their hand in school?
Yeah,
How do we give them that reassurance so they can trust me as an adult?
yeah. I would say, it does start at home, and to have that open communication. And when you, as a good parent as you are, Tim, you will notice when they come home in a shift in their energy or their mood. Maybe they don't want to talk anymore. Then maybe they're not eating. Maybe, it's up to the parent to notice what's different, like what's going on, and then go in and see if you can get them to share. And because that's what they need, is the safe place to share, and to let them know that, you're not gonna judge them for anything that happened. You just wanna know, that they're doing okay, or can they, tell you more. And I think that's one of the key things, is to let them process it all. You don't wanna, like, interrogate them, because that doesn't feel good, right? Uh, I have a friend whose son was being bullied, and, he kept saying, "I'm sick, I'm sick, I don't wanna go to school, I don't wanna go to school." So he missed a whole week of school, and then she said, "Okay, you seem fine, you need to go to school." So he reluctantly went to school, and as she was gonna drop him off, he said, "Can I tell you something?" And that's when he was able to share with his mom what was going on for him. And then, they went home and talked about it some more, and then they had a conversation with the principal. So it just depends on the child, it depends on your relationship and the communication skills that you have with each other. And sometimes it takes
And
a while after, you've been bullied, to kinda process it all, because you're thinking, "What did I do? What's wrong with me?" Because we all think that, everyone is normal except for us, right? Everyone's normal except for me. Oh, you know, but it's not true. We're all different, and there is no
mhm.
normal, really. So, yeah.
I do know from doing this podcast, this is like the 81st episode of this podcast. So over the past couple of years running this podcast, I learned about how to teach your kids to build that trust. And it may seem kind of, I don't know what's the correct word. So for instance, when my daughter, when she came home from school, her first day of school, she told me that a girl said that she smelled. And she goes, I want you to tell a teacher that this girl said that I smelled. So I have to build that trust. My daughter told me to do something, even though it may seem small to me. She's relying on me to take care of the situation. And yes, it could just be, first graders fighting with each other. That's just what they do. But if my daughter asks me to do something, I have to do it. So I emailed the teacher saying, hey, my daughter said a girl that she was sitting next to said that she smells. And my daughter told her that she doesn't. And either way, it got handled. But even those small little things, if you don't take care of it, it could break that chain of trust with your kids. So something I just learned doing this podcast, because with my two oldest ones, I kind of would probably just brush it off like, well, that's just the way kids are. But,
Exactly,
you know,
exactly. That's such a great point, Tim, is that it might seem little to you or to me, but it's huge in their world, and so it's so I love that you took care of that the way that you did. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and then you think about, oh gosh, I hope the teacher doesn't think I'm going to email her for every little problem, but like, well, if
Mhm.
my daughter tells me to, I probably will. I'm
Yeah,
just going to because I don't wanna ruin that trust with her.
no.
So the second part of my question is, okay, what about your adult friend?
Yeah, my
Um,
adult friend.
how do you how do you help them with the grieving process, or make them feel safe?
Kind of the same way, is acknowledging that recognizing there's a process that we do, and I'm also a mindfulness meditation teacher. And there's a process that's called RAIN, where you recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. So that's RAIN. Recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. So you recognize that you feel stuck or stressed or scared or whatever that emotion is. And then you allow it to be in your body and just investigate, like, what does this feel like? Oh, do I need to breathe here? Do I need to stomp my feet? What do I need? And then you nurture that because when you realize what you need, like maybe I need to talk to somebody, maybe I need to write something, then it helps ease and even out that feeling of shame, even of anger. That's one way,
Yeah.
but, and as an adult, if you weren't allowed, for me, I don't know about you, Tim, but for me, I wasn't allowed to show any emotion, happy, sad, or angry, and so it's such a pattern that gets stuck in your body, and if you weren't allowed, then you are still carrying this backpack of stuff in there that you weren't allowed to express. And then as an adult, it comes up even more, especially if you have children and it's happening to your children. So then it takes you back to when that happened to you. So,
Yeah, speaking about, allowing people to show emotions, I've been involved in martial arts for, like, over 30 years, and, back when I was a junior instructor and to now, I would see kids who would cry because they didn't do well on this kick, or they didn't learn their form right, or they can't remember, and you get the parents I see parents telling them, "Stop crying, it's not that big of a deal, blah, blah, blah." It's like, that's that's not acknowledging your child at all, his emotions, that's causing them more grief, and as an old school parent, I would call myself a little bit old school parent because when I
Mhm.
raised my first 2 kids, they're older, I say first 2 because we have a 12-year difference between the second and third one.
Oh, wow.
Um, I was probably a bit more old school. It's like, tough it up, whatever. But now with my youngest 3, gotta be more in tuned to how they feel. But that's it's really hard as a parent to acknowledge every emotion though, because sometimes those emotions can also be a behavior. So how do you tell which is which? Or do you just gotta treat it the same way?
um, I think as a parent, if your child keeps doing it the same, if it starts, you can see that it's becoming a pattern, then I would, invite you to find, like, we call it a pattern interrupt. So you interrupt that pattern. And what that means is if you have allowed them to cry, then have them cry, but then march in place and cry, because that interrupts the whole situation and can kind of move that emotions because sometimes you do get stuck in the cry, cry, cry. So then, move it around or maybe do jumping jacks when you're crying, something like that that just interrupts the pattern of that flow and
Mm,
maybe gives them some different thought patterns as they're doing it.
okay. I'm gonna move on from the kid aspect of it. I kinda wanna talk to more about as an adult experiencing bullying as a younger person, why do some adults still carry that grief into adulthood, even though the bullying stopped years ago?
Yeah, I think like we were talking about is they were not allowed to express their feelings at all. And so they just, took it and kept it with them, and as they grow into an adult, they think other people should just do it too, you know? And so then when they feel that bullying again, they have that anger and rage that has been held down for so long. I love that image of, a a beach ball being held down underneath the water, and it doesn't stay down there unless you keep pushing it, keep pushing it. When you let it go, it just pops up. And that's what happens to adults sometimes with some of the feelings and emotions and situations, the trauma again that they've held in for so long. All of a sudden, it just pops out, and then they're then they're holding all these different emotions that they've never had to deal with before, and it's very scary sometimes and exhausting. And just if you don't know what to do to take care of that, then it's really hard.
So is holding in your emotions, is this kind of like the start to developing PTSD?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, there's they have it's called childhood PTSD from holding in your emotions when you were a kid. And I've even heard it called childhood PTSI as an injury instead of a disorder, because it's actually a brain injury. PTS, a post-traumatic, symptom, yeah, it's a brain disorder, but they call
Hmm.
it's a brain injury, sorry, brain injury, but they call it a disorder because we always call everything a disorder, but it's an injury to your brain when, you're traumatized as a kid, as a grown-up, it's an injury, so
So it's not like a physical injury, it's
it's
literally
a
a mental injury.
yeah, it's a brain injury, like, your brain, uh, wires differently after you have been, traumatized.
How important, I shouldn't say how important that is. How do you approach a family member that you can kind of recognize some signs of grief,
Uh-huh,
but and you can tell that they're hiding it?
uh-huh.
How do you approach them? Because to me, I just knowing some people is like, stay out of my business. I can deal with it, you know.
Yeah.
But but how can you step in and support them?
Well, you can support them by, just going up to them and say, "Hey, I notice that you're being quiet," or "I notice this. If there's anything, that I can do to help you, please let me know. And if you need a shoulder to cry on or just someone to talk to, I'm here to listen." Because that's usually what people need when they're in grief. They don't need any advice. They don't need, anybody to tell them what to do. They just need someone to even just sit by them in quiet. Um, when I have been in grief before, like, even just the smallest grief, like, from it's not small, it was huge. When I broke up with somebody that I had been with for a very long time, I just wanted someone to just be by me and let me cry, and I wanted to go on a hike and just, like, scream, but I wanted someone to be by me. I thought that would be so comforting to just have a person witness. That's what we need as people that are in grief or that are going through something so hard, is just to have someone there to witness you so that you're not alone, and they can see you, and that you have another human there that's noticing you and just being there holding space for you.
So going back to your situation, did you ask for help or did someone just come up and realize that you needed it and then they
Um
stepped in?
I went through different things, like, at first, I was like, "Oh," I thought it was all my fault, so then I stayed in isolation, which is never good, but sometimes, we have to allow ourselves to go through however we need to go through it, and then I decided, "Okay, I need to start moving," and hiking was one of the things that I love to do, and so I did that. I did ask a girlfriend to come hiking with me. I said, "Will you come hiking with me?" And I just wanna mew. I called it mewing. I don't know if it's a real word or anything, but I'm just, like, on a hike and be like, "Ah," just,
Yeah.
"Ah," sighing really loud and crying, and just to be there so that I wouldn't be by myself. Yeah, so I did ask for help eventually. Right away, I did not
Okay.
because I needed to figure it out for myself.
Is there any, like, simple non-intrusive ways you could ask somebody if they need help without trying to get into their business?
Um, I would say just saying, "Hey, I noticed that, whatever you've noticed, because something caused you to notice something. Um, I wanna see if you're doing okay, and, I'm just here. I wanna let you know I'm here for you. And
Okay.
do you wanna go share a meal? Do you wanna go have a coffee?" And if they say no, then just, um, allow them the dignity of saying no and, just reaching out to them. If they don't accept the first time, then I would give it a couple weeks and then reach out again.
And then what if that person just feels stuck in their
Yeah,
grief and you are helping them and you're doing what you can?
yeah.
What else what else is there to do?
There are a couple different tools that they could use, but, then again, they have to want to do it, you know? We can't force anyone to do anything. But, moving those emotions out of the body is so, so, so important, and it's not really that hard. There's, one technique where when you're feeling stressed out or sad, you can take a pen and put a timer on for 2 minutes and start drawing on the paper, and about at 30 seconds, then you start trying to match your breath to the drawing, but you don't lift up the pen. And then that kind of helps to connect the breath to the movement. That helps the brain, again, to connect to that movement. And then there's also of just moving, moving the body depending on, what you're feeling. And that's where where you have to stop and recognize and allow those feelings and investigate, where is it? Is it in my chest? Is it in my throat? Is it in my feet? If it's in your feet, you stomp it out. It's in your throat. Feel free to, scream and yell, and shout and shake. I don't know if you've ever seen animals when they are running and they trip and they fall, they stand up and then they shake it out. And
Yep.
that's really important tip from nature, you know, to do that for yourself.
Is there any other advice you wanna give for people that are dealing with grief or maybe stuck in grief before we end
Yeah,
this episode here?
I would say that don't be afraid to ask for help. There's a lot of resources that you could reach out to. This month, we're in September right now, but I know this is going to air later. It's Suicide Prevention Month, or I call it Suicide Awareness Month. And there's always that hotline you can call 988. It's a good place to go if you feel like I don't wanna burden anybody, I don't wanna tell anyone anything because what if they do this or that? I've called it personally when I was having a really sad day, and I didn't wanna, like, bother anybody so I called it, and at the end of that line, there's a very nice person who just listens and, concurs with how you're feeling, and that's really it. It's not like they're gonna call the ambulance or anything like that, unless, of course, you're at that point, but hopefully
Yeah.
you won't be. But, yeah, that's another place. There's grief.com. Grief.com has a lot of different, tools that they offer there that are for free that you can go and, even if you have someone that's grieving in your life, there's a little thing that says what to say to someone that is grieving. And so there's a lot of really great, information in those places.
Awesome, and then do you have any way for people to contact you? I know we said that you're also a grief educator. Is
Yeah.
there a way people can find you to learn
Yes,
more
yes,
about what you do?
yes. You can email me right now. I don't have a website currently. It was up and then it came down, so I got to fix it. But you can email me at yourgriefease.com.
And
Your
ease is
ease.
spelled
EASE.
okay, because some
Yeah.
people would be cool and hip and put a Z in there instead,
Oh,
so
right. No, I should have done that.
yeah.
But yeah, just move the body, breathe, stomp. Don't be afraid to just, move that emotions. need motion because we don't want them to get stuck in your body.
Yeah.
That's when your shoulders start hurting and your back starts hurting.
Yeah.
Just shake it off.
And then awesome. And then I noticed I mentioned that you're also an actress. Do you have anything
I
coming out
am.
soon?
I have what's coming up right now? Well, I'm in this band, and so I'm in a band with Tom Kenny, who is the voice of
Yeah.
SpongeBob SquarePants, and we are getting ready to record a couple of Christmas songs, but we're also traveling to Arizona in October and San Francisco, and then we're gonna be in Maine in November, I think. So that's a lot of fun.
Okay. Yes, you gotta come back to Minnesota. When I took
I
my
do.
daughter with me, my daughter Rihanna, who never hangs out with her dad. I mean, she thought that was the coolest thing ever to actually go backstage. She got to meet Tom, the voice
Yeah.
of SpongeBob, because she grew up with SpongeBob. So
Oh,
she
that's
was like,
great.
the only
Aw.
time the only time she thought dad was cool is when I took her to that with you. So that
Well,
was
I'm so
awesome.
glad. It was lovely to meet her and get to hang with you, Tim.
Yes, thank you, Lupe, for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Be sweet to yourselves, everybody. You're precious.
And for myself, you can always find us at our very own website, which is www.breakingbullying.com. You can also reach out to us at our email address. If you have a story of your own bullying to share, or for whatever reason you want to get a hold of us, our email address is breakbullyinghere@gmail.com. If you're a victim of bullying and you don't know where to turn, there is online resources to help you. The first is the government's very own anti-bullying website, and the address is www.stopbullying.gov. If you have had thoughts of suicide or of self-harm, we implore you to stop. Reach out to the National Suicide Hotline. That number is very simple. It's 988. I'm Tim Flynn, and thank you for listening, and we will be back next week to continue the conversation to break the silence on bullying.